Hello, it's Greg Otten here with maritimegardening.com, and today I'm going to talk about going with the flow. I've got a garden bed here. This is the border of my garden. There's a big fence here that keeps out the deer and the rabbits and the porcupines and all that sort of stuff. And my intention was to, along the entire border, this is a fairly large area, even though the garden's only about 2 feet wide. The intention was to put perennials all around here. For some reason that just made sense to me. And I've tried to do that. But one of the problems is that outside the area, there's all these different weeds that, it's just a field back here, and there's different things that grow here, all kinds of different things. And they're perpetually coming in and invading the garden, right? Mainly one of the main things is blackberries. There's a wild blackberry that grows in the forest behind my house. It's not a particularly useful blackberry from my point of view. From a human point of view, it makes these tiny little berries. I'm sure the birds love them, but I'm not a big fan. They're just not very good tasting, and not a big juicy blackberry. Not really useful for anything other than feeding animals. So they tend to come in here, and the rhizomes just creep in, and they pop up all over the place. And so I've realized over time, just sitting back and thinking about this, because that's, if you're a permaculture gardener, you're supposed to be doing a lot of, mindful contemplation. I can't remember the exact term that they use, but you're supposed to just sit back and think a lot about what you're planting, where it's positioned, and why it's there, and how can I use everything to my advantage. So here I am, I've got a border garden. It's perpetually being invaded by different weeds that come in through rhizomes from the outside that I'll never be able to take care of. I mean, they're always going to come in because outside the garden's wild. Not controlling that space, so things are going to come in. So my thinking is that I need to plant things along this border that need to be dug up every year. Because as I'm digging them up, I'll be managing those invasive weeds as they come in. Here's a blackberry right here, right? And there's another one. And I don't know what this thing is, but these come up too. Oh God, did I just pick a sunchoke? Maybe. Anyway, back there I planted some sunchokes because they need to be dug up every year. And here I'm going to plant some potatoes because that just makes sense, right? There's a good water supply coming. This is on a slope here. So there's always water coming down along the hardpan. And it'd just be a very easy, no maintenance location to plant potatoes. I got some Yukon Golds here, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So I got the space here. It's infested with all these different. Here's another blackberry, right? They just keep coming up. So I'm just going to smash up all those roots. I'm sure they'll come back. But when I plant my potatoes, when I dig the potatoes up, whatever rhizomes have established themselves here since then, I'll dig those up again. So not a big deal. It all just works out. And anyone that listens to my podcast knows that I'm a huge fan of potatoes. I just think they're... What is that? Is that sunchoke? It is a sunchoke, and here I am digging it. Okay, that's sunchoke. Okay, so from here up, it's sunchoke. We'll just leave that alone. With potatoes from here down. Okay, so I've broken up all the rhizomes, and have I killed the invasive weeds in this bed? No. They will come back. But that's okay. Not a big deal. Because something like potato, where you dig up everything anyway, it's not a big deal. You can see this is nice, beautiful, loose soil, right? Great stuff. This was all horse manure a couple of years ago, and I've dealt with all the weeds that came with the horse manure. So here I am just loosening this all up, sort of churning up those weeds. And I'll probably get more weeds. Not worried about that at all. Make sure the camera angle is proper. Okay, so I've loosened up all the soil. Done the best I could. Don't have to be too fussy about it. I covered this all with seaweed in the fall, and it's broken down to a large extent. Here I am sort of churning it into the soil, which you don't need to do, but that's just because I'm dealing with the weeds, it just makes it easier. You don't have to be too fussy, especially with potatoes. Now I got my potatoes here, so I'll position them where I want them. I'm going to plant each one, about a foot apart. You notice I'm not cutting my potatoes, because in general I think you just get better potato plants if you don't cut your potatoes. Here's one that was cut by the seed company that produced them. Go. And boom, boom, done. Alright, so those are all the ones that are going in. I know where everything is, so now all I got to do is plug them in. So I just move this soil back, dig down as far as I can get with my hand. If I can't get into it with my hand, then it's not ideal. Dig down. As I've mentioned in many of my writings, I consider my hands the most useful garden tool I have. I think we tend to we tend to overemphasize the tools, the stuff, the accoutrements. I could manage this entire garden with a stick and a bucket in my hands if I had to, and something about that makes me comforts me, I guess. And you can just see how nice and loose this soil is. I'm literally going down with my hands. I can get about that far, right? And this was just hard clay. Something, and no one would say this was good soil when I started off. It was not. Ripping up these little bits of weeds. Some timothy here. Terrible, terrible weed. Anyway, they do fix nitrogen in the soil, I guess, but you let them take over, they will take over. And I have timothy coming in from outside. I've got blackberries coming in from outside. I've got whatever this is. I don't know what this particular weed's called. If someone knows, please let me know. The entire field is this stuff. I chop it up, use it as a chop and drop mulch, just because it's there. People talk about comfrey. Well, I don't know what this is, but I use it the way people use comfrey. It's got a very deep root system. Look, here's one popping up here. So this one is about 3 feet from the actual weed bed. Still found its way over, right? So it's just going to happen. No big deal. You just rip them up and throw them on top. Right? That's all mulch. It's going to feed the worms. Continue with my potatoes here. There's a potato volunteer. There's a potato that's there from last year. I noticed that. Interesting. I guess I had potatoes here last year. I can't really recall exactly what this was. I'll pop these in. It is nice soft soil, I have to say. And that's with no tilling whatsoever. And I just gave it a quick once over with my Homey gardening tool. I don't get any promotional money from the Homey people, but I think it's just a great tool. Anyway, just popping these in. There we go. So there's a dozen potatoes all planted. I mentioned sunchokes earlier. Another term for those is Jerusalem artichokes. It creates a root that's similar to, well, the root looks like ginger root, but of course it doesn't taste like that. Apparently it tastes like water chestnut. I've never grown them before. I just came across they were given to me, the sunchoke roots, but it's supposed to make a nice big flower and with an edible root. Alright, so I got those in. Now I'm going to throw some hay on top for moisture retention. That way I don't have to do anything. This is all the work I'm doing for this garden. I'm not going to water this, I'm not going to mess around with it. Just putting a hay mulch. And you're like, hey, hay has weeds in it. Yeah, it does. And I don't care because this bed's going to get weeds anyway. But in with the weeds are going to be delicious potatoes. And I'll dig it all up, and you know, every year, later in the summer, I'll dig these potatoes up, and they'll be delicious potatoes. And you don't worry about the hay. Potatoes will push their way up through the hay, no problem. Been doing this a while. There, that's done. So a dozen potatoes planted in no time at all. So there we are. The potatoes are in. Just to give you a look at here's the sunchokes. These plants right here. These are sunchokes, or Jerusalem artichoke. It's supposed to grow a very tall yellow flower, very pretty. So it'll create a nice effect. This is the far northern end of my garden, so this way is south. So it catches all that good heat, and it's on a grade. The water runs this way, so it's naturally irrigated. And of course with this mulch, it'll just take care of itself. So just a quick little video on going with the flow. Observing your gardening space, understanding how it works, and coming up with ideas to take advantage of problems. Right? Having invasive weeds come in from the border of my garden is a problem. So plant something there that works with the problem, right? And the weeds are coming in because the soil is fertile, right? They're saying, hey, that's a great place to grow. It's better than over there. This is the good stuff. So I want to plant something here that's going to grow, and then once a year I can dig this up and manage the weeds and keep them from colonizing into my, beautifully wood-chipped walkways in between my different garden beds. All right, so I hope that was helpful. If you enjoy this content, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, listen to our podcast, maritimegardening.com, and check out my column in the Local Express. And until next time, get out there, get at it, and have fun. And see you next time in hot, unseasonably hot, beautiful Nova Scotia. Thanks for watching.